Kansas City Sports Update Studios. Welcome to Kingdom Radio, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. Brought to you by Arrowhead-update. Join Chris and Richard on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Player FM, CastBox, and all third-party applications. Check us out on Facebook platforms such as Kansas City Sports Update and Arrowhead-update. And if you cannot find us there, Google or search Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Chiefs, and you will find us. Welcome to the Kingdom.
How are we doing, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to Kingdom Radio. I am your host, Richard Smith, and with me tonight, as always, we have our senior NFL analyst, Kris-Chavez, braving the storm out there in Albuquerque. We doing all right there with the weather there, Chris?
Yes, I'm taking shelter, and I'm okay.
All right. Well, the man is in good shelter, and he's doing all right. Well, hope you don't break up much here. I hope that your signal prohibits a Kingdom Radio podcast tonight, because look, Kansas City, this is the pregame edition of the Bengals Chiefs preseason game 1. And I know there's not a lot of significance to the preseason games, but let's be honest, Kansas City, this is the start to possibly the greatest season the Kansas City Chiefs have ever seen. So I think there's some precedence, within this game, with the scenario that lies ahead with the Kansas City Chiefs. And I also think that there's a lot of players to watch for in this game that we are wondering whether or not they'll make the roster, if they're second string, and what's going to happen here, because we have some deep talent here, and I have a feeling we're going to cut some players that are going to go to some other teams and really have some high production. So, Chris, I guess I'll let you start off here with the Bengals Chiefs at Arrowhead. What do you think here as far as the first quarter? What's Andy Reid saying about our starters? What should we expect as far as length of time in this game?
I would be expecting, based on what I've heard, for the majority of the first team offense to be seeing the action for the entire first quarter, and second quarter comes in and you get to see the second team.
Okay, second quarter comes in, and you said so does second string?
Yeah.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit there. And
oh, sorry about that.
Nope. And that's what's coming out of, the front office there in Kansas City, is that we do have to a first quarter to look forward to with our starters. But I do think it's important also to get a lot of looks from our depth here, because we have some guys that are making some noise there in training camp, and we'd really like to see them in a real football setting. Well, number one, obviously, Juan Thornhill. I think it's obvious in Chiefs Kingdom we know what he can do, and the reason why he is not in front of Sorensen in the depth chart is because Andy Reid wants to see it in a game-time experience. And also, I want to touch base a little bit on Marcus Kemp. Marcus Kemp has shown some promise on offense, and it was talked about him possibly being trade bait. There's a lot of scenarios that we've talked about with Marcus Kemp, but I really want Kansas City to keep an eye on him, because I think he's one once Chase Litton or whoever's leading the second string crew, Chad Henne. I think we'll see a lot out of Marcus Kemp. And what do you think about that? And then kind of give us a little bit of your list or what you have in store for this game.
Yeah, Kemp has definitely been showing a lot in training camp, showing a lot of promise. He seems to have finally put things together. The main thing that I'm going to be looking for out of him this game is the chemistry that he has with his quarterbacks. Is he running those routes nice and sharply? And then obviously is he catching the ball?
Right, and they said that Kemp has had a lot of nice snags there in training camp. And then another player that has really, really turned some heads, in the halfback position, also playing tight end as well, is John Lovett, the quarterback from Princeton. But for him to be a fullback on the Chiefs roster, I think he's going to be more of a flex player, and he could work his way into the starting rotation for the Chiefs, because this is a guy that can throw the ball, run the ball, and catch the ball. And they said that this man really, they don't even remember a time that he has dropped a pass in training camp. And to me, that's a big deal for a guy like that, to come in from quarterback, be a fullback, but also play tight end. So kind of give me your thoughts on John Lovett here. And that's kind of I wouldn't say a surprise, but I mean, hey, we could really use that versatility all over.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
The versatility is going to be a great asset to this team. And to have the depth at fullback if we need it, the depth at tight end, which is another area that it's not necessarily solid. It could definitely be improved, and having a guy who can do all of those things, catch the ball, block, has some speed to him, is going to really help out both of those areas. And I am really excited to see how he does in tomorrow's game, probably about second half, and what he does and where he lines and how they use him.
And he could line up anywhere in our offense. And another thing is, I want Chiefs Kingdom to keep in mind is Lovett can line up anywhere in special teams as well and have an impact. That's one guy that's catching my eye that has shown a lot of promise, and I really hope he makes this roster. Now, I want to talk about Khalil McKenzie, offensive lineman. That's another guy in the depth chart that we drafted last year. And with that being said, I think the most important aspect about him and his game is in the off season he worked with Will Shields at the Will Shields camp or his facility, and that's extremely important for a young player like that who's really trying to get into his own, to work with one of the best of all time. And I don't think, and as you watch the video, was it displayed in the franchise? Did they show that in the franchise?
They did. They showed probably 5 minutes worth of the workout.
Yes, and so you saw that in the franchise that the Chiefs had put out. I'm not sure what episode it was, but the man was working with Will Shields in the off season, and that's a big deal. And I look for him to come in, and I'm he's not going to take Cam Irving's spot, but maybe he will. We'll see what happens with this. This is an interesting guy right here. I know if it's offensive line, and he doesn't get as much recognition as he should, but this could be some big news for Kansas City for the future of our offensive line. Another one, Darren Lee. I'm really interested to see Darren Lee because it's looking like he's going to be our fourth linebacker. Behind Hitchens, Ragland, and Damian Wilson. But here's the thing. Darren Lee is going to be our solid pass defensive linebacker along with Anthony Hitchens. So I'm excited to see what both of them do together and how we can fit him into the scheme. So what do you think, about McKenzie and Darren Lee? And then kind of go into what you have to talk about this game, because I feel like I've been taking up a lot of time here. But go ahead and touch base on that and move into what you want to say about the Bengals and the Chiefs.
Sure thing. So McKenzie, definitely, we need to see some development from him, some sort of growth. He was on the active roster for every game. Didn't see any game time, so we definitely need something from him. And as you were talking about with Darren Lee, I'm really excited to see what he can do. I would love to see him potentially, not necessarily take the starting spot, but definitely be of a starter quality That would definitely create some depth at linebacker. Not that we don't already have that, but to solidify that depth chart a little bit more would be fantastic. To bring up another name that kind of surprised you glossed over and didn't mention was Darwin Thompson. I don't want to say necessarily third string, but he's definitely a depth running back for us. The running back that we drafted in the 6th round out of Utah State. I'm really excited to see what he can do in our offense and at game speed.
I am too, and it's funny that you say that because, here later in the show, which actually our next segment here, I literally was writing his name down for this next segment as you brought him up, as a player to watch, and he really is. He's an interesting type of player, and I feel like that. Look, Reed and Veach's whole deal is speed kills. If you've noticed, every single player on our team has speed, and they're versatile. And with that being said, no team will ever get the same look, ever. And it's perfect. And that player fits that mold so well. I feel like Thompson can come in as well as any player and make a contribution. I think this is just one of those things that Andy Reid really has an offense that he can toy with and do anything that he wants to at any given moment in any way that he wants to, and has all the depth to do it. Even when our second string is in, we're really in a situation where we have the upper hand and just about any scenario that you can throw on the field.
And I absolutely have to agree. Brett Veach and Andy Reid have done a great job of bringing in some tremendous talent and depth at a lot of the positions. Not every position, but definitely a lot of the positions.
And it's one of those things, too, is in any business, there's no business that's perfect. If it was a perfect business, there wouldn't be any need for innovation, and there wouldn't be any need to look into the future because that would be taken care of by itself. And especially in this business, it doesn't work like that. But top to bottom, on this roster, even, these players that we're talking about right now, I feel like that Chiefs are in a great spot. These players, I don't really feel like they're fighting for a spot on the roster. Most of them already have a lock. It's just Reid is wanting to see how are they going to help the team right now and throughout the season. And I'll tell you what, for all the versatility that we have, all the speed, the dynamics on offense and defense, we're sitting pretty in Kansas City. We're sitting pretty. And this is going to be the first game for Reid to showcase this depth that he's brought to Kansas City. And so what do you have to say, about this game here outside of these players that we mentioned? Is there anything else that you want to add to this game? Because this is the start of something special. Depth is important. Is there any other players that we should really keep an eye on, that can make a huge impact here throughout the season?
Another name I want to definitely keep an eye on is DeMontre Wade. He was definitely making a lot of waves early in training camp, being moved all the way up to the first-team defense. And I definitely like what I've heard and seen of him. I don't see him being able to do that in game situation. And another quarterback I also want to throw out there is Mark Fields. I really want to see what he can do in that defense.
Yeah, that'll be fun as well, and I hope that that's something that progresses and matures into a good situation for Kansas City. So, this game isn't worth any type of prediction. I feel like that the Chiefs' starting roster will handle their business there in the first quarter, but I also think we'll run the table with our depth. This is going to be more of a fun game for Kansas City to watch than we think, because there's so much structure there as well. I think we're going to have a lot of fun watching our depth take it to the Bengals, because let's be honest with you, I mean, where the Bengals sit in their roster, our second string is probably better than their first string. What would you say to that?
Oh, quite easily. I wouldn't even say that it's close.
So, first quarter, check it out. Check out the starters. We'll check out the depth from there then on out. We'll see what happens. We'll see how interesting of the game is. But Kansas City, this is the start of the 2019 season and our run to Super Bowl 54. So get out there to Arrowhead, support our Chiefs, tailgate, see some friends you haven't seen, in 6-7 months, and enjoy yourselves, Kansas City. And with that being said, we're going to move on to our next segment here. We're going to talk about the announcement from Andy Reid that the Chiefs are going to run a running back by committee system here for the 2019 season. And I think it's no surprise that we keep talking versatility. And I think by going with a running back by committee situation here is probably the best for Kansas City, because I have said that, look, I don't trust Damien Williams to be our starting running back. He hasn't done enough to prove himself with me. And it's obvious that Reid feels the same way, but feels that there's enough talent throughout the lineup for all of them to be solid contributors in their own ways. So I feel like that's a perfect plan by Andy Reid, and I feel like it's going to turn out very well for Kansas City. So Chris, take off with that a little bit. What do you feel about this announcement by Big Red? Are we in a good position here, or do you think that he's discrediting Damien Williams?
I think it has less to do with Williams and more to do with primarily Hyde, but as well as what Reid has seen in the other running backs. I was reading through his comments, and he was definitely talking up Hyde and Darrell Williams. And a little funny or thing I've noticed is that he and Spags really don't mention a lot of the rookies by name. And Andy Reid was talking about, and we have this other guy who can run around out there, when he was referring to Darwin Thompson. And he can do a lot more than just run around back there.
Right.
But I think that with the speed, with the ability to catch the ball out of the back, with the power that Hyde and Darrell Williams bring, they all bring an aspect to the running back position that Damien Williams was supposed to be the quote-unquote complete back, except for one problem, his ability to stay healthy right now. And because he wasn't healthy and out there working in the offense, he, quote-unquote, lost that starting spot. He'll probably still be starting, but he's going to be sharing a lot of touches with these other guys. Right.
And, okay, so what about Tyrann Smith?
It's a very unproven commodity right now. Again, he'd definitely be another guy I would love to see in game action and see what he can do with the ball in his hands, going out and trying to grab the ball on an out route. Excuse me. Just see what he can do in the game. See if he can pick up a blitzing safety or a linebacker. The jury's out on him right now. I can't really say one way or the other with him.
Now, let me say this here about Tyrann Smith. As a special teams weapon, he's an asset for the Kansas City Chiefs. I firmly think that what took place last week with Tyrann Smith moving to running back was opening up a spot for Morris-Claiborne. And they wanted to keep Tyrann Smith on the roster for special teams, and the only place that they could put him was running back. Because that might be the only place where we're going to free up enough space to legitimately keep Tyrann Smith on our depth chart.
It will be really hard to carry 5 running backs plus a fullback, but I'm not saying it's not possible. It'll just be pretty tough. If that were to happen, I could see the Chiefs going with just 2 quarterbacks. They might be going light at tight end and just go with 2, maybe 3, if they decide to keep Lovett and not list him as a fullback as well. Maybe we lose a offensive lineman, which won't be a good idea because you always need a lot of depth there.
Right.
But it would be possible.
Excuse me. And here's my thing with where we're at in depth, is no matter how you look at it, in one way, shape, or form, we're going to cut some talent off of this team that we probably don't want to. And with that being said, that's probably the best position the Chiefs could be in, and it's a position that we've been in for a few years now. And it wouldn't surprise me if we cut a player loose like Damian Williams, who's hurt and who's been hurt multiple. Haven't we not seen his name on the injury list, here the last, a month or so, and training camp and OTAs?
I believe so. He's had a hamstring issue for a while now.
Okay, so I'm not sold on him, and Reed isn't either. Look, and I think that he'll be an asset. I don't think he's going to be our starter. And I've been saying this for quite some time, and there's people who don't agree with me on this, but I just don't think Damian Williams is our guy. And he might not even make it through the season with the Kansas City Chiefs. I could be wrong, but I've also been high on Carlos Hyde too. Remember, probably about 4 months ago, I said, look out for Carlos Hyde. That could be our next Priest Holmes.
Yeah, I do remember you saying that.
And so this is an interesting call by Andy Reid, because anything can happen here. But I feel like that's kind of the epitome of what we're looking for here in this Chiefs offense. Anything can happen. Anybody can be at any given play, in any given position, at any given time. And we can be picky and choosy on who we're going to keep and who we're going to cut loose. So I really love this position that the Chiefs are in, but it just makes it interesting because there's so many key players to our depth. I don't want to get rid of anybody.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be really hard to see some of these guys walk and go to other teams. But with the amount of talent that we have, and knowing how Veach loves to make some wheeling and dealing moves in the 4th week, we could expect to see potentially some moves, some of these names that were going to get cut, get moved and to bring in some additional talent.
Hey, and which has held true, for the last few seasons, even cutting major talent that Kansas City has been used to seeing on the field. And with that being said, you're talking about cutting talent to bring talent in. With the Chiefs bringing Morris-Claiborne in, I want to talk about the Chiefs' defense and how there's a foundation of relationships between every single player, and one way or another, there's a string of history between everybody. And this holds true with Morris-Claiborne too, because he played in LSU with Tyrann-Mathieu. And so I really like the fact that there's another pair of defensive backs just like Kendall Fuller and Brashad Brayland. And I think that when you have two players that are comfortable with each other, obviously, they will play better. They trust each other. And we're finding sets of that on our team. Sets of coaches and players, players and players. And then they all seem to string in every way, shape, or form. Everybody seems to tie in together, and it's really amazing to watch what Brett Veach has done here. But do you think that reuniting those two will spark Claiborne's career again?
It won't be the only thing. I think also working with the Chiefs coaching staff is going to really help him out, and surrounding him with all of this talent is going to really be a make or break year for him. Much like Bashaud Breeland, and it's put up or shut up time for him.
Right.
He's had 7 years, and he's on a 1-year contract. As a lot of guys refer to it, it's a prove me contract. And if he can parlay that into any sort of competent showing at cornerback, he could be making a big market contract deal next offseason. Probably won't be with the Chiefs, but it'll work out for him in the long run.
Right, and I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, to have a 1-year, $1.5 million deal with all incentives included in that 1.5, you're nearly taking the league minimum to come play on the Kansas City Chiefs for a season. And I understand that we're talking about a guy who really hasn't... Look, Morris-Claiborne is kind of a letdown in the league, to be perfectly honest with you. He really has never done what everybody thought that he would do. Now, the upside to that is Morris-Claiborne had a career year last year with a Buffalo Bills team who obviously struggles. Before that, a Dallas Cowboys team who has struggled. We're talking about a man who's played in one playoff game in his entire 7-year career. And I think that it was a system error. I think this guy can come into Kansas City and do something with all the talent around him. If you don't shine in a system like this, you're not ever going to shine anywhere. And it is put up or shut up. And I'm going to say it right now, Kansas City. I say Morris-Claiborne is going to put up. And it's just because of all the talent around him, the attitude of the Chiefs and the defense, the coaching staff, all the energy in Chiefs Kingdom. I just think everybody's going to play phenomenal. I mean, look at Demarcus Robinson last year. I mean, he'd always been a decent player, but he stepped up. You put all that talent around him, look what he did. Chris Conley's down there tearing it up in Miami right now. And I just think it's no mistake what Reed is doing and how he is directing the talent and his leaders, and it's just something amazing to watch.
Yeah. One other point I want to make on Claiborne is he came from that LSU team playing with Honey Badger and with Patrick Peterson. And in that secondary, with those three highly talented players, Claiborne was surrounded with talent, and that's where he was able to shine. And playing for a Dallas team that had minimal talent in the secondary, then going to the New York Jets where they had minimal talent in the secondary, it's hard for him to truly shine because he has to be the man and he has all that pressure put on him. Here in the Chiefs defense, he doesn't have to be the man. He can be comfortable and just focus on doing what he needs to do, which is all anybody really needs from him. We don't need him to be Superman, and just be Clark Kent, we'll be fine.
Let me ask you this, and I really like that. Be Clark Kent and you'll be fine. But I want to ask you something. You brought up a really, really interesting fact that got my wheels turning like crazy. How much time is left in Kendall Fuller's contract? Do you know?
This is his last year.
Okay. So this is Kendall Fuller's last year on his contract. How long did we sign Bashaud Breeland for? 3 years? 2 years?
No, he was on a 1-year contract as well.
Okay, so we got both these guys on a 1-year contract.
The only cornerback that we have on the roster for next season currently is Charvarius Ward.
So I want Chiefs Kingdom to think about a scenario here. And I'd already touched base on this before because I talked about how the Chiefs' defense in one way, shape, or form is all strung together by connections or playing together or coaching scenarios. And then you brought up an important point that at LSU, Patrick Peterson, Morris-Claiborne, and the Honey Badger all played in that secondary at the same time. And with the pattern of what's going on in Kansas City, with the defense, I look at this scenario as I don't think it's out of the question for a Patrick Peterson to possibly still come to Kansas City, because you put those three back together and then possibly Charvarius Ward to top that off. That's a ridiculous defense with three players that know each other extremely well. What do you think of that?
That would be fantastic. It just kind of, what scares me about that scenario is the age of Peterson and of Claiborne moving forward beyond next year.
Now, what if this is another 1 year, we'll say 2-year deal for Peterson, but that escalates us to 2 more Super Bowls, and we cut loose Braylon and Kendall Fuller, which will free up probably 18 to 19 million. I'm not exactly sure, what their contracts are, but that seems about legit. But you pay Peterson $20 million with $20 million in incentives over 2 years. I feel like we can nab him in, but do we even need him at this point? Do we need any more pieces of this puzzle?
That's the big question, and I want to say that if we move forward with the right pieces at cornerback, there's a chance for us to create some depth, some young depth that, if they stay with us, will continue to develop and probably pay off dividends here in about 2 or 3 years. I'm really high on Mark Fields, and I like the tenacity that Rashad Fenton brings, our 6th-round draft pick. And then some of these other guys, DeMontre Wade. If these guys can continue to develop and not have a fallback year like Charvarius Ward so far has been having in training camp, these guys could be really have a tremendous secondary for us for the next couple of years.
Yes, and I want to touch base on our entire depth chart here for a second and kind of just give Chiefs Kingdom an idea here of, just how far our depth goes and how deep it actually is within the NFL. Because I'll tell you this, as a player who goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, your stock goes up because you are on the Chiefs roster and you are coached by that coaching staff and you are surrounded by as much talent as you are. So just to be on that roster, I promise you, each and every one of those players' stock has risen.
Yeah, and we come post week 4, just before the first week of the regular season, and these guys are going to be getting cut or have such high trade value, we could potentially see some good return on some, I don't say no-name guys, but guys that otherwise would have been getting cut, and we could be getting some good pieces back in return.
Yeah, and who did the Steelers sign from our defensive secondary?
Steven Nelson.
Exactly, and what, they gave him $36 million over 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
So, you look at those numbers, I mean, Steven Nelson's being pulled from the Chiefs. I know he had some decent numbers, but let's keep it honest. Chiefs Kingdom, we watched Steven Nelson and how garbage he was in the secondary, and there's a reason why he was released. But the value that these players have to other teams is going to be astronomical. And here's my thing, is this is a revolving door, is all this is. And Brett Veach has set up a great system with his scouts to keep this revolving door having talent, because every single year that you bring talent to your roster, even if you have to trade it off, the following year, the stock in all of your players will go up because your reliability as a GM is second to none, and you keep producing talent after talent after talent, which keeps bringing the stock of the Kansas City Chiefs up every year, top to bottom. And it's perfect for anybody who has the fortunate luck to become a Kansas City Chief.
Yeah, and with another article that I saw earlier this week, a lot of NFL teams are very cornerback hungry. And for us to have the amount of talent that we have at the back end of the roster, now granted it's developmental for the most part, but I'm willing to bet that, an injury here, an injury there will be some teams that will be willing to pay a little bit higher of a price to peel away one of these players from us.
Absolutely, because you hear all the talk of the players coming in this season, like Frank Clark and the Honey Badger, and even Okafor, is why wouldn't you want to be a Chief? Right now, everybody wants to be a Kansas City Chief, and you have that mentality throughout the league, and you have the roster like we do. It's just, look, if Veach keeps this up, there's no way to stop the Chiefs in the next decade. It's what he's built in such a short amount of time, and what he's doing, and we're still $20 million over in cap space. I mean, holy cow! Like, this is a dream scenario for the Chiefs, and this is a once in a million opportunity. And I'm not sure the Chiefs Kingdom understands the significance of where we're going in the future due to what Brett Veach has done up to this point.
Yeah.
So, hey, look, with that being said, I want to move on from the, Claiborne, Mathieu, LSU connection, and we're going to move on to our next segment. And we're going to talk about the playoff contenders, who to watch for, and we're talking about those wild card teams. We have our obvious teams, Chiefs and Patriots. But outside of that, who do we have here in the playoffs? What are we looking for? Give me a couple teams here, Chris. Who are your playoff contenders here, or bubble teams that we really should be watching for here in Kansas City?
So I'm going to definitely throw out the Texans and the Colts from the AFC South. They could definitely be a division that throws in a division winner and a wild card team. Both of those guys, both those teams should be contending for a playoff berth.
And, I couldn't agree more with you. And I'll talk about the Colts a little bit more here a little later in our episode. But I'm going to go with the Browns and the Jaguars. Obviously, we see what's going on with the quarterback position with both of these teams. There's a lot of talent on defense for the Jaguars, and really there's a lot of overall talent for both of these teams. And I feel like these are the dangerous teams. These are the ones outside of the, the 1 and 2, obviously the Chiefs and the Patriots, that I feel like could make the biggest splash and surprise somebody, outside of, like you said, the Colts. But I really want to touch base on both these teams because I feel like that those are ones we might have to look out for. So what do you think of the Browns and Jaguars?
Definitely think that the Browns are the NFL baby team this year. Everybody fell in love with them,
right?
And sees them as the cute new thing because of all the pieces that they've got. And don't get me wrong, I mean they've got a very talented roster, but put them in a pressure situation. Let's see what they can do then. I'm not 100% sold on them, but so far I do like what I see coming from them.
Right.
And then in regards to Jacksonville, Nick Foles is definitely going to be a contender. You've got Chris Conley there as well. A question mark at running back, but when he's on Fournette, he can tear it up. And then that defense, boy, is that scary.
Yes. And there's more certainties with the Jags than there are the Browns, but I feel like the Browns' offense is in the position that Kansas City Chiefs were last season. We know what they're capable of. We just have to see it on the field. Do I want to see a successful Browns team? Yeah. Is it good for the Chiefs right now? No. It's really not. That's the scariest team for me. I know what I'm getting out of every other team, but there's a lot of talent on that Browns team, and I'm interested, like everybody else, to see how they pull it all together. They have a history of being a flop, but there's just a lot of talent all the way around there. So, yes, both these teams, huge playoff contenders. Who'd you say, the Colts, and who was your other pick?
The Texans also have the AFC South.
So Colts, Texans, Browns, Jaguars. I mean, that formidably could be the wild card.
Mm-hmm. And there's one other name that I want to throw out there. Not necessarily to make the playoffs, but I think that they could potentially definitely affect the playoffs. Yeah. I think these guys are going to knock off some teams that nobody expects them to. The New York Jets.
Ooh,
they could upset some people and really change the dynamic of the playoff picture.
If any team in the NFL has the most to prove, it's absolutely the New York Jets. And because they're not on the radar. Nobody's thinking about the Jets right now. Yeah, they have Bell. But I still think that, can they be a bubble team? Yes. Do I think they're going to be the same old Jets? Yes. You're going to have to show me, New York. You're going to have to show me. So, with that being said, we're going to move on here to our next segment.
This is the No Look Pass, brought to you by cincinnati-bengals Music Solutions, providing everything from simple background audio to complex creative audio pieces. Bring your project to life with cincinnati-bengals Music Solutions.
All right, this is the No Look Pass, brought to you by cincinnati-bengals Music Solutions, turning all of your music projects into a masterpiece. And look, this is the No Look Pass where Chris and I, we ask each other a question to test each other's football knowledge off the top of our head. This is not scripted, and this is my favorite segment in our show. And tonight, Chris, I'm going to ask you the first question here. And this is a hypothetical question, but we had talked about the playoffs, and I'm going to stay with the playoffs here. Who would you prefer to face in the divisional round in the playoffs this season for the Kansas City Chiefs to get us, to the AFC Championship game back-to-back seasons?
Quite honestly, this is a rather easy question. I want to see the Patriots.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. One, if we see them in the first round, that means that they're playing in KC.
Right. And
it's been a while since they played in KC that late in the season.
Very true.
But also, the sooner we knock them out, the clearer our road is to the Super Bowl.
Now, hold on. They did play in Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game last season, right?
Well, yeah, but aside from that one, in the regular season, they haven't played in KC a whole lot in the last couple of years.
And you're right. And that trend is following again this season as well, Kansas City. So
yeah, you guys put my ranch on that one.
So I have to go with you on that one, too. I'd really like us to knock off the Patriots because I think in the AFC Championship, if we can get another team in that setting, it'll be a easier way to the Super Bowl for us. So I'm with you on that one. And, okay, Chris, go ahead and throw me your no-look pass this evening.
Okay, so this one's going to be based a little bit more in history. And as you know, Derek Thomas is a very formidable pass rusher.
Yes.
However, over the course of his career, How many interceptions did he have?
1.
Oh, well done. Well done.
He had 1. And, gosh, a part of me wants to say that he returned it for a touchdown, but there's about 75% of me that says that I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that one was not returned for a touchdown.
Okay. So, but hey, I'm glad that I hit on the numero uno, because I do remember watching a highlight of that, and I'm not even sure what game it was in, but it was, gosh, I want to say it was like 10 years into his career.
Yeah, that definitely sounds right.
But hey, I'm glad he got his 1 interception, and hey, I'm glad I got that right. There's been some tough questions here lately, and look, we've been doing a killer job on that. Mind you, I wanted to give you your props. You've been doing really great here on the no-look pass.
Thank you. You as well.
Hey, we're showing Kansas City our Chiefs knowledge here. I think that's pretty important. And hey, I want to touch base on something. We're going to move on to a next segment, and this is something I'm adding in that Chris had talked about, and it reminded me as we were talking about the scenario. I don't know why, but Chris and I are going to start the Chiefs Kingdom Fantasy Football League. And Chris, go ahead and explain to them how they can enter the Chiefs Kingdom Fantasy Football League and just how many teams are left after you and I. Go ahead and explain what we're going to do here on our fantasy football and how you can get involved.
So on our Facebook page, if you message Richard or excuse me, keep getting this frog in my throat, or the Kansas City Sports Update page, leave us your email and we'll add you to the board that we're going to be doing it through, which will be ESPN. And we're going to be going with 6 more teams. Besides Richard and I, that will be a total of 8. And if we get a high turnout, we might push it up to 10. But the first 6 people to give us your emails, well, we will add you guys in, and we'll just see how well we all do.
Hey,
but this will be a free fantasy football league, no money exchange, just for fun.
And I find it extremely important for Kansas City to get involved. And look, if we get enough participants, we might do multiple leagues, depending on just how many people get involved here. And really get involved and share this podcast, Kansas City. The ultimate goal is to get listeners involved and to get listeners, and the bigger our network gets, the more we can do. So get involved here at Kansas City. We really would like to do this fantasy football, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to get connected with the community. And with that,
and another thing that you threw out there, Richard, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Nope, go ahead.
Was that we might also give like weekly updates as to who's in the points lead or the wins lead throughout the broadcast or throughout the season as well.
Yes, and that's going to be a lot of fun. I'd really like the community to get involved because this will be my first year in fantasy football as well, and it's a great way for Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Sports Update to really get involved with Chiefs Kingdom. So, with that being said, we are going to move on here to our last segment, and we're going to talk about the Super Bowl contenders. And this is outside the bubble teams and the playoff contenders and the teams that I found dangerous. But this is also outside of, the Chiefs and the obvious Patriots. And don't get me wrong, the Chiefs are obviously number one on Chris and I's list. But we want to talk about some Super Bowl contenders outside of Chiefs Kingdom because we want to know what we have to look out for. And I have a couple teams here that I'm going to start out with that I think can really give Kansas City a run for their money in the playoffs and give a lot of other teams trouble as well. And I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers because you never know what Ben Roethlisberger is going to bring to the table. He's always got tricks up his sleeve, and the Steelers always find a way to make it in the playoffs, and they're always a force to be reckoned with in every round of the playoffs. I also look for the Indianapolis Colts to be better than they were the season before. They've added a lot of pieces to that team, and I think that the Colts are really going to surprise a lot of people. So the Colts are really my number one team that I think can be a Super Bowl contender coming out of the AFC West outside of Kansas City and New England. So go ahead and take it away, Chris. Let's hear about your Super Bowl contenders on the AFC side.
Aside from Patriots and Chiefs, the only one that I truly see is going to be the Colts. Of everybody else that we've already talked about, they're probably the only other quote-unquote complete team. They've got a couple holes on their roster. They certainly don't have the depth to contend with the Patriots or the Chiefs. But if they're healthy, they could definitely make a very strong push for that Super Bowl.
Yes, and that's a team that gets overlooked quite a bit in the AFC here in the last 4 to 5 years, and rightfully so. They really haven't had a lot of talent outside of Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck hasn't been on the field very much as well in the last 3 seasons. So, Steelers, look, Steelers always find a way to get it done, and we're talking about a team that has made it to the Super Bowl as a excuse me. Dang it. The Steelers have made it to the Super Bowl in the number 6 seed. Sorry, I could not find a way to get that out. So you always got to look out for the Steelers. And like you said, the Colts, they just are a complete team. And I don't feel like they can give the Chiefs a run for their money. But I think outside of the Chiefs, that's a team that can give the Patriots some trouble. And we'll keep it at that because I don't feel like any team is going to hang with the Chiefs. They don't have the roster or the depth to even touch the Chiefs at all this season. And do you have anything to add here tonight, Chris, to the episode?
I just want to touch base on the NFC side.
There we go.
As far as who we'll be facing.
Okay.
There's really 3 teams that are going to be in contention on the NFC side. Everybody else is going to make well, not everybody, but there's going to be lots of teams that are going to make the playoffs. But the only 3 true Super Bowl contenders that I see right now are the Chicago Bears, the New Orleans Saints, and the Los Angeles Rams.
And I'll tell you what, every single one of those teams are exactly the team that I would have on my top 3, and it's really no secret. I feel like that those 3 teams are a notch above everybody else in the NFC by a long shot, but there's a lot of great talent in the NFC as well. But the Rams, you've really got to look out for them. I mean, Aaron Donald gets overlooked, but I guess he doesn't. But that's a complete team as well. You got to look out for the Rams. New Orleans, they put some more pieces to that puzzle. As long as Drew Brees is behind center, that team is going to be incredible. Don't ever count Aaron Rodgers out either. I just want to throw his name out there. But I think you really nailed it there on your top 3. And if there's any team in the NFC that you really think could beat the Chiefs, who would it be?
Well, we kind of covered it 2 episodes ago. I have to go with the Bears.
Right. And that was the team that I personally think is like a questionable 3, possibly 4, but I don't know. There's some good talent. You never know what's going to go on with the NFC. Arizona could be something to look out for as well. But the Bears with that defense and Khalil Mack, they really have something special going on there. And Trubisky showed up. Nagy's doing a great job. Yeah, the Bears could really, really be a scary team for us. And I think that I'd rather play New Orleans in the Super Bowl. That's the team that I would want to face in the Super Bowl. What about you?
Honestly, if the game could end up being like last year, I would love to see the Rams game for the Super Bowl. That game was so exciting, and I think that this time through, our defense would definitely make the game less competitive, and it would be a great way to kind of end that competitive matchup between the two of us to win that Super Bowl.
Which it almost seems like it's starting to turn into a rivalry, which is, I'm fine with that. I'd love to see a bunch of rivalries, flourish here with the Kansas City Chiefs. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens, Kansas City. And it all starts here in this first preseason game, Bengals-Chiefs, Arrowhead-Stadium. Get out there. Chris, thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to wrap up the show here. We've had a great episode with a lot of content that I'm sure Chiefs Kingdom will enjoy. So, Chris, thank you for being on the show as usual.
As always, it has been a pleasure.
All right, my friend. Well, Kansas City, you have a great evening. Let's get excited. I know it's just preseason game 1, but the season is underway. This is what we've been waiting for all summer long. It's time, Kansas City. Let's get the wheels rolling here, and let's take this season full throttle. Let's win the Super Bowl and bring the Lombardi Trophy home to Kansas City. Have a great night, Chiefs King.
From the Kansas City Sports Update Studios, welcome to Kingdom Radio, where we talk about all things Kansas City Chiefs. Brought to you by Arrowhead Update. Join Chris and Richard on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, Player FM, CastBox, and all third-party applications. Check us out on Facebook platforms such as Kansas City Sports Update and Arrowhead Update. And if you cannot find us there, Google or search Kingdom Radio and Kansas City Chiefs, and you will find us. Welcome to the Kingdom.